Good afternoon, E39 source. This is Nate from Southern California, and today I'm going to be doing something that I've wanted to do since I first got the car. And that is the European lower dashboard retrofit. And what that does is it eliminates this large gap here. In the United States, because Americans are dumb and don't wear their seatbelts, there's a mandate that says you have to have a certain amount of padding for someone who doesn't wear their seatbelt just in case the airbag doesn't catch them, so that they can't submerge underneath the dashboard. In Europe, there's no such regulation because apparently they wear their seatbelts more than we do, and so this dashboard is much thinner. Actually, you can see right here just about how much thinner it is. Now, this retrofit does two different things. Number one, it increases the interior volume of the car by a good 1.5 inches or so, however big this margin is. And it actually is lighter than that just because it is smaller. The second thing is it actually makes this door line here line up much better with the European dashboard. There we go. You can see it there. So notice how this sweeping curve does not wrap into the dashboard smoothly. It kind of dead ends here, then ducks down and goes into the center console. That's because in Europe that line connects, in the United States it does not. So without further ado, let's get started. The parts list can be found online at zeckhausen.com. I will also put it in the description below, hopefully. It's not too complicated, but it is expensive. If you were to buy all these parts new for a black vinyl dash like mine from BMW, you run about $1,200. For a luxury leather M5 dash, it would be about $2,000. And there's a little bit differences in the colors, but black vinyl is what I'm working with. So I bought this used from a Bimmerfest and Bimmer Forums user, DKing078. Thank you, DKing, Daniel. Pretty nice guy, sells this stuff, knows what he's talking about. Got a comprehensive DIY on how to do this, so that's what I'm going to be using. But here's a little video process just to show you how it goes. First things first, you have to take off your wood trim panels here, here, and on the other side by the driver, if that's wood or technical graphite, whatever that has to be in your car. Take those three off and we'll move on to the next step. Now, as these cars get older, it's not uncommon to expect to break a few of these clips or for the clips to stay on these wood panels. I broke this clip here, you can see, which goes there, and they're both pretty loose, they're pretty easy to remove, but just be aware of that. You may want to purchase a few spares. I'm going to replace this trim at some point, so I'm not too worried about it, but it won't hold in as securely as it used to. Now, ideally, you want to use some sort of non-marring plastic pry tool. As you can see, I'm just using a screwdriver wrapped in electrical tape, because again, I'm not concerned too much about this wood, but if you are concerned about cracking it or breaking it or any way, you want to use some sort of pry tool that's not going to scratch up the finish. And next up is the removal of the MID. Pull your little volume button off, or if you've got a navigation screen, remove that using Ryan's excellent DIY. Stick a T8 Torx down in that little hole down there, and you should be good to go. To disconnect the MID from the car, you just press this little black tab down and rotate this gray clip back, like so, and it pops right up, just like a million other connectors on this car and many other BMWs like it. Set the MID aside and we'll move on to the next step. Now that we've got the MID out, we're going to remove the actual business CD unit with the screw here and the screw here. They do take quite a bit of threading, so be prepared for that, but other than that, it should just slide right out after you're done. Just be aware that these bolts are T10 bolts, not T8, like the MID unit. Again, T10. Okay, now you need to remove the various connectors off the back of the MID. Start with this one, just press this tab in, slides right off. That's the antenna cable. Don't want to break that because it's very expensive. And I believe that's one solid cable that runs back to the back of the car. So if you break that, your mechanic is going to have a field day with the amount of labor that it's going to cost to replace it. Moving right along, you can just ignore this little guy. Okay, this whole entire assembly unclips itself. And by doing so, you press down on this little green, where the green dot is here, squeeze that together and lift up. And the whole block is released from the back of the unit, like that. Pretty simple. You might notice that I have the CD pre-wiring, CD changer pre-wiring for the trunk, and the auxiliary cable running in there. Up next is the removal of the glove box and the little struts that hold it in place. To do so, you just need to take a small tool, and this is a small flathead, as you can see, and get into this gap here, and pry this outwards. When you pry this outwards, it will release this clip, and then you can release this shock that holds the glove box into place. There are two on each side, or excuse me, just one on each side, so there's two in total. On this side, we have a dampener that absorbs the speed, but you really can't see it because it's pretty dark down there. Apologies for the upside down camera angle, but this is how it's going to be. Underneath the glove box here, you have this plastic kick panel There's like a little ring here that's perfect for grabbing it. What you're going to want to do is just grab it and pull it straight back towards you. It is fairly difficult to remove, but you'll definitely know when it snaps free. No clips, no nothing to break, so just pull on it and it should come right out. And here's a better look at that panel outside of the vehicle. It sits in the panel like in the vehicle like that. Those two grooves at the bottom slot in nicely. Just pulls straight out. No clips, nothing to worry about on top. A little bit of sound deadening, but other than that, nothing else. And with that panel removed, you can see what we came down here for in the first place. Two 10mm bolts right there and across the bar right there. Those both need to be removed, and that's with actually the hinge support for the glove box. And with those two bolts removed, the glove box will practically fall out in your fingers. Now you need to disconnect the flashlight charging socket, and that's pretty easy to do. It's a typical pinch type connection. Can't really show you that well because it's pretty dark back there. But you just squeeze it with your two fingers like so and pull out on it and it comes right out. With the glove box removed, we now have access to a wide variety of screws that we need to remove to insert the glove box. One of them is here, one of them is here. Over here on the kick panel, three straight above the glove box near the light, one here, which has already been removed on my car, one here, and also one there, which has already been removed. There's also one here, which you'll need to remove. All of those removed, set them aside, put them in little plastic baggies so you don't lose them. Keep a note on where they go. Now that you've got those screws out, we need to remove this lower kick panel here. You just grab it and slide it towards the rear. Be careful not to scratch yourself up on something sharp up in here, but should just pop off pretty easy. Two more screws to remove. This one is a 7mm head screw underneath the kick panel that we just removed. And then pop the cap off of this little guy in the door panel here and remove it as well. And this side should be pretty much disconnected except for a couple screws at the top here. Moving right along from the passenger side to the driver's side, I've left one screw at the very top there just so the panel doesn't start to sag and drag on something I don't want it to. But now we're going to get down in the footwell here, remove the same plastic panel that was over the footwell on the passenger side. The difference being this side actually has screws and things to hold it in place just in case you actually kick it while you're driving. You don't want it falling down and getting in the way of your pedal operation. Alright, so I switched to my phone because it's got a flashlight on it so I can see what we're doing. But essentially, this lower kick panel has a screw in three places at the top. 1, 2, and 3 is behind my hand at the moment. Then there are two black twist tabs that just pop out at the bottom here near the firewall, 1 and 2. And now we need to remove the gong speaker by taking those black tabs. There's 4 of them that you can see, 1 in the front corner, 1 there, and then 2 in the back. Squeezing them towards the center, which will release the gong speaker from the assembly, and therefore we can remove this panel. Sorry about the funky audio, but I really can't film this with my T3i because it's just too big to get back in here. Here's a better look at that panel outside of the vehicle per the norm. We have 1, 2, 3 places for screws, 1 place for another screw. At the back here, or near the firewall, we have places for those 2 black plastic twist tabs, and there's the gong speaker relief. If you have a manual transmission car, this shape here will be punched out so that you can actually shift gears with your clutch pedal. Now that we've got that panel underneath there removed, with the gong speaker just dangling from where it should be, we're going to remove this lower piece of the steering column. This piece will be changed during the process because, again, this will be much thinner so you can fit a longer piece here. It works best to have this fully extended. I gotta go grab my keys for that. They're on the opposite side of the car in the door. But fully extend the wheel, and then there's a screw.
It's important to note that this screw is made of plastic. Select the right size screwdriver and don't strip it like I did.
Right in here, this little gap here, right there. That you remove, use a pick tool to separate these two halves or some sort of iPod opening tool, something non-marring. I'm probably just going to use my electrical tape wrap screwdriver again, but we take this panel off. The best way I found to remove this lower plastic panel here is just to take a screwdriver and pry down from this point here where the gap is the largest and just keep prying until you hear a snap noise, or stick a couple other flat-bladed, smooth, non-marring tools in these gaps. And just keep snapping. You'll notice there's a few clips on there on both sides that just hold it in place, but you can get a nice look at all the wiring in there and clean it out if you want. And next step is to remove these screws at the front of the dashboard, here, here, and over on the other side here. Now, As soon as we've removed those and that screw, this entire lower dash assembly should be ready to pull out. It might almost actually fall on your face, so be careful. One more note while you're removing the driver's side of the dashboard is you need to disconnect the OBD2 connector here. So essentially what you need to do is slide this little plastic clip here up, and then get your fingers underneath it with the little door open, and just push on it and it'll pop right out. No problem. Still got your OBD2 functionality. Now you can start to remove these pieces. Now there's one more screw, I believe, right here. Behind this kick panel as well, I believe, that holds this piece here. And after that, we should be ready to remove the entire dash from the vehicle. There's that screw that I was talking about behind that kick panel. Again, remove that, and then this whole panel should be ready to go, provided, again, you've removed those top screws. My mistake, I forgot to remove this screw here, and on the opposite side, that screw in there. Remove those two, make sure you have your MID disconnected, your MID cage disconnected there, and now we should be good to go. And now that the dash piece is out, to remove the MID cage from the dash, you remove two screws, one here through this little access hole, and one on the opposite side through that access hole right there. Remove those two. The screen or the center section should pop out. It might be different for nav cars, I have no idea. I don't own a nav car clearly, but you guys can figure it out when it comes to that point, because I presume you've probably already worked on it at some point. So have fun with that, and then we can get to the exciting part, which is slicing up some metal to actually fit the new dash. With the dash completely removed from the vehicle, it looks something like this. Somewhat scary, but if you need to, you can still operate the vehicle. So if you want to do this over a several day period, let's say you don't have much time between work, or you can only work several hours a day, not too hard to do, because you can just continue to use the vehicle. It's just going to look ugly, and obviously if you get in an accident, passengers' knees are probably going to suffer a little bit, so don't get in an accident. But you can look in at the various componentry and see how BMW packaged everything. A little bit of rust on the center support beams for the dash components, all the wiring, stuff like that. Now we move over to the the driver's side of the vehicle, the left side and the right side of the world, right? No offense to you guys in the UK, but you don't need to do this because you already have the European dashboard. So over on the driver's side of the vehicle, there is a metal plate that I'll show you in a moment that we need to slice quite a bit out of. Here is one of the benefits of the European dashboard. We're going to slice a significant portion of this metal out, and this is an irreversible modification. So if you're averse to that, don't attempt this project. We're going to slice this up and install a little storage pocket here, which is one of the benefits of the European dash, is you get a little storage pocket that fits quite nicely. You can throw change, sunglasses, something like that into it. And to chop up that metal, I'm not going to use anything other than a pair of old tin snips that I borrowed from my neighbor, free of charge, which is awfully nice of them. But just use a pair of tin snips, get under there, start slicing away at things. Careful, don't grab anything without a pair of gloves on, a pair of leather gloves or something tough, because that metal is going to be very sharp after you've just sliced it. A couple of things to be aware of as you're slicing away at this metal here. Be careful, this is the EWS module right here. You break this, you won't be able to start your car, probably without going to the dealer. This is the wiring harness that runs up to the wheel here, so be careful of that. And again, be careful of these very sharp edges that have developed. It's just, you don't want to slice your hand open while you're working on your car. The OBD2 port goes right back in, just like the last one. This one's black, but you pull this clip back and press this connection down in there. With enough clearance, it should fit just fine in there. You notice I've actually filed and hammered back those edges a bit so that anyone who does work on the car in the future doesn't get mangled. And installation is essentially just the reverse of the removal. You're going to start with the big padded pieces of trim, like so. Stick them up where they go, stick a couple screws in there, hold them in place, then move on to the new pieces that secure at the bottom. But I may not film as much of this because, again, it should be, once you've done it the first time, it's pretty self-explanatory as it goes back together. One more thing up under the dashboard before you can move on. You do need to replace this vent right here, coming out of the heater duct, which is directly underneath the steering column. What you need to do, essentially, this is already the European one because I've already installed it, but you just give it a good stiff pull, and it'll pop right out. You can see a little clip right there that needs to be released, but good stiff pull, that pops out. Whole thing comes loose, pretty simple. You can see the insulation is a little bit worn on this one. I'll just glue that back in place. And then you take the new one and stick it up in there. In the exact same fashion, make sure that clip aligns. This little groove sits nicely with that tab. Stick it up in there and it'll stay in place for you. Another quick note, these two new screws must be used to slide into these slots on the new lower kick panel. They will integrate into the European style lower steering wheel cover and go right in there. Don't use a bigger screw, you'll strip those threads, then you'll have to buy a new one of these or find some other way to secure them. Don't do that, save yourself the hassle. They're pretty tiny in both head and in thread. So here's a direct comparison of the American glove box latch on the left and the European glove box latch on the right. They work on the exact same principle, but the European one obviously does not include this large metal piece that makes this quite a bit heavier, and it obviously doesn't have to go through nearly the same amount of material as the American glove box does. They work in pretty much the same fashion in that you pull up on this lever and it activates a small cam switch, if I do it correctly, because it's obviously a little bit more difficult to do it outside of the vehicle. You pull up on this black lever here, and these pins are pushed in. The way the American glove box does it is it essentially transmits that information over the same mechanism, but it activates this little rod here, which then activates this cam on the back of the switch. So this piece is the same between both glove boxes. This piece does not change. The black plastic handle also is the same between both glove boxes, and the way the locking mechanism works is also the same. Essentially, the American one just has this big metal addition. We're going to show you how to remove that and restore a natural, quote-unquote, European glove box, things like this. Now, removing this from the vehicle is extremely easy to do. Essentially, all you have to do is remove these two screws from the inside of the glove box. Presume your glove box is unlatched and you can open it up. Remove these two screws, and this top piece will become loose, and if you actually remove the screws, they'll come apart very easily, so I'll do that now. Okay, so the first thing you do is you take a few quick squirts of penetrating oil and lubricate these two cylindrical pins right here. This one here and this one here. These don't run all the way across, so you can't just push them through, which would be really nice. But what you need to do is grab onto these with a needle nose pliers and just yank them out on both sides. Then you can wiggle this metal bracket out, and we can put it onto the new European style piece. So let the penetrating oil sit for a moment. I've already let it sit. Wipe it off the pin as much as you can so you can get a good grip on it with the pliers. And then it's time to get angry with it. And so there's one pin out. Grasp the other one. And twist a little bit as it comes out to help it slide out. And there it is. It comes right out for you. Wipe off a little bit of the grease. And set this all aside. These pins, don't lose them because you'll need them to reassemble everything. And now the only thing holding this in is this little spring right here that provides the tension to make sure it snaps back. But the entire assembly is now free to come out. Okay, this is your cylinder that you need to transfer over to the European style glove box. And make sure you get that spring realigned, and preferably don't jab yourself like I just did. And on the European ones, it's the exact same process in the exact same location. So first thing I'm going to do is squirt these with just a touch of penetrating oil just to make it a little bit loose and stop that terrible squeak, hopefully. I like liquid wrench penetrating oil just because it's cheap and it's pretty much available everywhere, and it works quite well. 1, 2, and we're done. No more than that is necessary. It should come out. There we go. And you can see that this is just a pressed sleeve. It's just a round piece of metal, or a flat piece of metal that's been pressed into a circular shape. Not exactly highest precision thing, but it works. Alright, same procedure, just lift this little tiny metal bracket, and again you can compare the American bracket with the European style bracket. Alright, and then the European latch here is completely useless. We have no use for this, we don't have a key for this, so this can either go in the trash or wherever. Alright, so you're going to take the American dashboard glove box latch, the one that works with your key, hopefully. This is actually not mine, so it doesn't work with my key, but if it were to work with your key, you would see this plastic cylinder in here rotate, and this would become a vertical alignment so that it would prevent the latch from opening. But what we need to do is depress this spring here, the tension spring that provides tension for the latch so the latch doesn't flop around, and install the European bracket onto it. So I'm going to depress the spring with a flathead screwdriver, relatively wide blade. Okay. And hold that in position. Preferably better than that, so it doesn't just snap back on me. And then I'm going to take this bracket, align the notch with the spring, so there's a little notch right here that needs to be aligned with the spring, where the spring will fall on the bracket. So it should be aligned now for let loose. You can now see that the spring is held nicely within that little notch there. Okay, I'm going to hold this together so it doesn't pop out. I'm going to reinstall those pins I just yanked out. The way I'm going to do that is just take the pin itself, find the end that's not distorted from my grabbing it with the pliers, slide it into that little notch, and I know it's probably hard to see, but slide it back into that little notch with just a little push, grab my Phillips screwdriver, and just press it in as much as you can for the moment. I'll take a hammer to that in just a moment. Not too firmly, but just to press that together one last time. Alright, you can feel that one step in a little bit, and voila! And here we are, all wrapped up. So you can see my glove box now fits exactly flush with the line, and it fits much smaller over here when I close the door. The seam right here fits perfectly as well. Still this nice gap that's consistent all the way down the panel for the door. But overall, I can move my seat a lot closer to the front of the vehicles, which gives the back seat passengers a lot more leg room. Meaning there's more overall interior space because my knees now have more space. And it's just a more comfortable place to sit. I also think it looks better with this nice sweeping curve down here. But that's just my opinion. So of course this is not a cheap project to do, and it did take me a full 3-4 hours to do this. If you're in a hurry, you're going to go slowly and make sure you get all the bolts back in place and all that sort of stuff. Probably 5 to 6 hours at the maximum. Providing, again, you're not too scared of cutting away at the metal on the opposite side. You can see I've already stuck my sunglasses down in that little pocket there. That little pocket does also hide the OBD2 port, so you may need to buy an extension if you have a tool that's rather large, like mine is. I have this little scanner over here that I use. This is BMW Scanner 1.4. Works quite well for me. I'm probably going to do a little video on how this thing works and what you can do with it in the not too distant future. But overall, I really like this upgrade. So if anyone's looking to purchase a black lower dashboard setup for an American style with the big pad at the bottom, leave a comment below and I'll leave you my email. We can get in touch. But I'm just very pleased with how this has turned out. And one of my favorite features that I didn't even really think about is that you can now actually see the trunk release button just by looking down. You don't have to scoot your head way down there to see it. And it's actually illuminated, which is a nice little feature that you couldn't really see before. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and leave a comment below, and a big thumbs up would be helpful. And enjoy your E39.